Hello, everybody. Welcome to another thrilling episode of JavaScript Jabber. I am Steve Edwards, the host with the face for radio and the voice for being a mime, but I'm still your host. I'm flying solo today on the panel. Dan is on vacation. Chuck has this lame thing called work, that gets in the way of the podcast. And so you're stuck with me today. But I have a very special guest, Mr. Anton Stoychev. How are you doing, Anton?
Pretty good. Thank you.
Good. It's, I forgot to give weather update. It's been great here in Portland. The summer has been awesome up until this week. And starting yesterday, the rain came in. So it sucks. I miss my sunshine. And Dan always gives his update about how it's hot and dry in Tel Aviv, and I'm so jealous.
I have these kind of updates very much often. I work with Israelis, and they're constantly, it was a nice day at the beach. It was a fantastic day today. The water was perfect. Yeah. And it was freezing kind of over here. Right.
So before we get started, why don't you just give us the background on who you are, what you do, where you work, why people should give you money, etc.
Absolutely. So, again, thank you for introducing me. I'm Anton. I am currently working at Yotpo as a core platform team, front-end infrastructure officially named, right? So it's a team serving the whole company and other developers within it. I've been doing this kind of thing, front-end JavaScript, whatever you want to call it, like JavaScript on all specters, let's call it. Even touched in the good old days the PHP kind of a templating world and websites and WordPress and ages ago.
Oh boy!
Yes, it's like 20 years ago or something like this. I'm not sure. So from IE6 support until today, kind of the world. That's me, and I've naturally had like the desire or interest into the nitty-gritty stuff of front end. How do we get there? How does the production work? Like what do we do to make it super fast? But how does that piece work? How do CDNs work? And I kind of naturally ended up doing this kind of thing, which is build optimizations, tooling, optimizing the tools, making sure they work, and making sure upgrades work. How do we release? How do we upgrade? And this is the sort of thing that the team does, of course, alongside core stuff like design system. I think most companies have that. Like a core team, like most largish companies have that, like a core team that kind of serves the rest of the company and tries to make the developer experience either better, faster, whatever you want to call it.
Well, I guess that depends on the size of the company.
Sure. Absolutely.
My previous place, I was on developer team, and I was also doing a lot of the core stuff and, tools and infrastructure too, sort of a many hats type of thing. So I suppose when you get to a larger company and you can have a separate team just for that versus, the developers itself, and that would be nice.
This is like a natural evolution, I think. In previous company, I was like, but who is responsible for that? Okay, I will be the responsible person for that. So it naturally evolved, finally finding a place that has attention to detail enough to and kind of treasures and have maybe legacy enough to pay attention to okay, we need that team to kind of improve the situation. That's usually what happens. Or from the beginning, somebody already experienced that in a previous place. So they set it up from the core, from the get-go.
Right.
Right. Yeah.
So let's go back real quick. So you mentioned PHP. I came of age very similar to you.
Oh, my God.
Started with PHP, and I still do a lot of PHP with Laravel.
Okay.
Which I love to work with Laravel and Vue and Inertia.
By the way, I was one of the first few people, Laravel version, I don't know how much, 0 point something.
Really?
It was, I think it grew explosively. I did not expect Laravel to become such a, I remember the days of Zend framework and the such, I don't know.
Well, there's, I remember Nuke PHP.
Okay.
Cake PHP, which I think is still around.
Cake. I remember
PHP
Cake.
PHP Nuke. Nuke is what that was. I did my first websites, I just did in plain PHP.
Same.
No framework.
No templating. Just combining HTML. Yeah.
Oh, God. Well, you talk about the templating. That brings back nightmares because I was at a few years ago, the last couple of years that I was in the Drupal world. So I lived in the Drupal world for, that was what first got me into web development was Drupal because I got tired of writing my own thing like many people. And so I found the CMS and I lived in that world professionally up until probably about 2019. But I was at a very huge, large multinational corporation. And we were converting an old website based on Microsoft Server 2000 and classic ASP, not ASP.NET, classic ASP to Drupal 7 with Apache and Solar and some other things. But they had decided, because of the whole fear about SEO and JavaScript frameworks back in the day, to stick with Drupal on the front end and the built-in PHP template at the time. And I got tasked with caching. And I still have nightmares about that to this day, about caching with PHP templating and
I mean, caching on its own, even if you don't combine it with like a CMS, is a mess, because it only takes one person to just forget something, or like not to have like guardrails and do something wrong, and then you get the production issue.
Right. Well, they say that the two hardest things in computer programming are naming things, cache and validation, and off by one errors. So yeah, I can vouch for that. But anyway, and then you talk about IE6, and I can remember, designers would literally charge extra because they had to accommodate for IE6 abnormalities in their CSS.
Oh yeah.
And then when it finally died, it was at a DrupalCon in New Orleans in like 2013, 2014, literally had a parade celebrating the death of IE6, and Microsoft finally said, okay, we're not supporting it anymore. So,
but the next thing was IE11. Like there was like there was a phases of IE that people were like dreadful about.
Yeah, until you got to Edgium,
yes,
whatever you call the when they finally changed engines.
Yeah, Chromium basically.
To V8. Yeah, right. Edgium. So yeah. Sounds like we've been through some of the same wars.
I think it's kind of like age-based, to be honest. So once you start web development early on, you kind of inevitably going through these trenches, which I find to be super helpful. Like I love to have gone through this. I don't think of them as like, oh, wasted my life or something like this. I think I've gained super useful knowledge even for today's world where like asking AI, like, oh, can you do this for me? Yes, thanks.
Right. Remember the days of figuring it out.
They're not gone. I can spend like 2 days talking about my day-to-day, configuring CDN stuff and like going through documentation, asking AI together with me and not being able to figure out stuff. So, it's not gone. It's still there.
Right. I had one of my favorite interviews I did on another podcast, Views on Viewers, with Taylor Otwell of Laravel. And he was asking us about our thoughts on where Laravel should go in terms of just focusing on PHP backend or focusing on the front end framework. And we talked about the pendulum switch where, when you and I started, you learned from the backend. You started with the LAMP stack and you had to know the backend and stuff. And then you learned JavaScript in front of that. And then you got to today where a lot of people get into web development from the front end, from the JavaScript frameworks, Angular, Vue, Svelte, React predominantly, just because it's so dominant anymore. And then they don't know the backend. So now they got to learn the backend, and how do you, accommodate for that? So it's been an interesting pendulum, watching the pendulum swing back and forth for sure.
Yeah, I'm just thinking SSR at the moment because this is like my daily driver the last few months. But anyway, yeah.
SSR. Okay, so let's get into what we're here to talk about then. So you worked for the company, how do you say it? Yotpo?
Yotpo. Yeah, Yotpo. It's like an Israeli US company, Yotpo. So they're kind of big in the e-commerce.
Right, YOTPO in case you're looking for it, .com.
Yeah. Cool. Yes. In there, we open sourced something a few months ago, and it is something we use actually internally to manage, let's say, the migraine of upgrading or maintaining tooling working, and let's say up to date. And of course, have quality gates. Some people call them code checks. Usually, you can see them on things like GitHub, on your PRs, and basically guarding you. And helping you, by the way, especially in the AI world where someone needs to put the brakes on some of the code or that get generated. So it's kind of a double important to have some code checks. Of course, you can wing it, aka vibe it, and just see what's up and then I don't know, I ask another AI agent to maybe refactor it. Sure. But I think
AI to refactor AI, is that what you
I think so. I think maybe there is a future where we don't care about quality. We just use the model as of today, and then think about 2 years in the future, the model will be better. So they will generate something better, and we ask them to just improve the code base. There is a world maybe.
The problem with that, though, is the AI is training itself on the old stuff in the first place.
So. Yes. On itself, maybe, yeah. So we wanted to kind of enforce this and do this in a company that has been around for more than 10 years. And I think it's natural if you have projects for more than 10 years or even 5 years that you kind of accumulate legacy. And maybe in this podcast you talked about it, maybe I've read it somewhere, but legacy is not naturally a bad thing. Legacy means you have something working, right?
It's true.
But this thing that is working is no longer performant, is no longer maintainable. The tools that you use can no longer work with it. If you want to upgrade one tool, you're kind of stuck in this nightmarish scenario where you're like, oh, I need to upgrade my ESLint. It's not connected to my code. I want to upgrade it, but the new version requires a new version of Node.js. Oh, okay. So I need to upgrade Node.js. Oh, okay. Then I need to upgrade all my other packages because they also need they need to be compatible with the new version. So there's a vicious cycle of upgrades basically, because everything kind of depends on each other and they're all grouped into one thing. Even though if you think about it, most of the things they're not really connected to each other. Like ESLint doesn't use your build stuff, like things like ESLint, like code checks. Yeah, unit testing, it doesn't use your actual build unless you were talking about Vite and vtest, which kind of shares the same build mechanism. But let's say we're talking about Webpack or TurboPack and Jest. They do their own thing. Like unit tests are built differently than the Webpack. So they actually live in total isolation, like in two different universes where Jest do its own thing with your source code, and then Webpack or whatever tool you choose do their thing with your source code. So in theory, they are absolutely isolated. But for historic reasons, we kind of put them in the same package, put them in the same bag of dependencies. Like, oh, let's put Webpack, let's put Jest, let's put... Yeah, go ahead.
So wait a minute. Those are two different things, though. I mean, Webpack and Jest are doing two different things. Jest is your unit testing, your code testing, right? Webpack is more concerned with the bundling and
absolutely
breaking apart. So I guess I'm confused as to, it's like you're conflating two different things there.
I know, and I think this is where I haven't explained it probably well to have been more clear, but this is my point. They're absolutely two different things. They have two different purposes, and they have like two different universes of building. I think we're on the same page here, right? Like Webpack do its own thing and Jest. But what do you usually do? You have one package JSON, and all of the Jest related stuff and all of the Webpack related stuff, they live in the same package JSON, aka in the same bag of dependencies called the giant node modules, right? Like you kind of combine them together. And there's a weird scenario where, let's say you found a bug and it's a really nasty bug in Jest. That's just a scenario. It could be any other tool, right? It could be ESLint. It could be, let's say, even a end-to-end testing tool, right? But you found a problem and you want to upgrade this tool only. Like you don't want to deal right now. You have other priorities, right? You have to do a new feature or do some actual product work. But you want to fix this bug, and the bug is fixed in the new version of Jest. Okay?
So this is a bug in Jest. This is a bug in Jest itself.
In Jest itself,
okay.
Absolutely.
Just to clarify.
But you found it, oh, wait, in 3 versions in the future, this bug is no longer there. It's fixed. So your options here is like, okay, I can maybe live with this bug and document it very well and just try to stay away from it, or try to upgrade Jest. And this is where I'm trying to say there is an actual problem for me in my head. It's like a dependency management. If everything lives in the same bag and you want to upgrade Jest will tell you, wait, you want to upgrade from version, 5 to version 8? Okay, but I need a new Node.js. I need Node.js 27, let's say. 24. Okay, this is, I think, the LTS version, 24.
Sounds about right, yeah.
But then Webpack will tell you, hey, okay, you upgraded Jest and Node.js, but I'm not working with this Node.js version. Like, sorry, no. Or even worse, you built tooling. Like, let's say you're not a React world, you're Angular world or something else. Most of those, even React nowadays with the React compiler or something was code, they actually have a thing that runs together with your build. And Angular whole thing is that they actually control the build. They have a compiler, Angular compiler, right? So imagine this also tells you, hey, I also don't work with the new Node.js. Figure something out. I am not going to work with this version. And then you end up, okay, so I need to upgrade also not only Jest. I only wanted Jest. I only wanted to upgrade this thing because there was a bug. But now suddenly I need to upgrade the entire framework. And guess what? When you upgrade the entire framework, you need to refactor all your code because there's probably breaking changes, right? You're probably upgrading 2 versions in the future. So now you end up in this situation where you either, I cannot upgrade, I'm stuck. I have to live with whatever I have today, or you have to upgrade everything. Like you have to upgrade all your tools, all your framework related stuff, all your runtime dependencies, maybe not. But let's say framework at least, right? And refactor. So I'm not sure about you, but I find that very kind of a scary moment because this is what defines kind of the depth of a code base. You're kind of stuck and you cannot upgrade it. It's too much work to upgrade it, or it's kind of equal to a rewrite because you have to upgrade like 10 versions in the future or 5 versions in the future. So the effort of upgrading is almost equal to the effort of like, let's start something new, something small, something performant, and let's gradually release it.
Well, I guess it depends on the size of your project. I mean, a
Sure.
smaller project, yeah. Larger project, that's not even a possibility. You got to do what you got to do.
Yeah.
I ran into that with Laravel, on the back end, just because I was tasked with upgrading from Laravel 11 to Laravel 12, and my boss was like, day one, Laravel 12 is up, let's do it. And I'm like, okay, I'm running into all kinds of dependency issues where the dependencies have not upgraded to be able to handle Laravel 12. And so you're either looking at patches or you're waiting or...
I'm nodding, by the way. I'm not sure if it's somebody is watching or listening, but I'm heavily nodding here because this is it. You can't upgrade. You're kind of in a moment of shit. I'm sorry, but like I can't move. I'm stuck with whatever I have, so I need to make it work or start a new thing. But as you said, you can't start a new thing every time you get stuck, right? Okay, so I'm gonna offer an alternative to this world, right? We talked about the typical scenario where all of your bag of dependencies, you can put it any language here, by the way, like Laravel, like with its all of the dependencies, Python with all of the dependencies. But here, the open source that I'm talking about, breakproof.dev, which is just a GitHub repository and it redirects there, basically offers the following concept. Okay, in the JavaScript world and the JavaScript world of dependencies, right? What we are used to is this bag of dependencies in Node modules, okay? But what if we can isolate each tool with its own dependencies and its own Node.js version, separate from everything else, but still be able to work together? Okay, so let's say TypeScript or Jest has its own list of Jest plugins, Jest configuration, right? And specific Node version. And I can only upgrade the Node version for Jest, and I can only upgrade the Jest dependencies. And this does not affect the Node version for any of the other dependencies that I have in my project, no matter whatever they are. How does that sound?
I already have a few questions running through my head here about how you would do that. But I'm curious. Well, I mean, just obviously, does that mean you have multiple Node versions running concurrently somehow? Or how do you're saying, okay, I can upgrade this dependency from this version of Node to 24. Maybe this one still has to be on 22, for instance. How you rectify that? But I'm assuming you'll get to that.
Absolutely. But I think this is useful. Like if this is your first question, super valid question, by the way, and there is an answer as you guessed. Yes, this means multiple Node.js versions, right? And maybe immediately you have an inner fear of like, oh my God, like I have to maintain multiple versions of Node.js, right? but maybe you can actually limit that. Like you don't need to have all the versions of Node.js. You don't need to have like 14, 16, 18, 20, 22, 24. You can have like a whitelist. You can have like, okay, I support this 20, 28. That's it. Like 3 whitelisted ones, right? And this is where we come into the repository. Why is this open source like a repository? This is just a template for a repository. And something we mentioned before we started recording is monorepos, right? And there are many tools for monorepos as a whole. Like if you start research for monorepos, everything will come up. Like there's Rush, there's NX, there's Turbo Repo, I think, and all of them are kind of helping you with monorepos. And we went through them with the team, and there was one that kind of popped up, which is actually an alternative to NPM, and it's called PNPM. It is popular. I'm not like, I discovered PNPM. Let me tell you about it. No, I know it's kind of popular. It actually, many people don't realize, or at least I found many developers I work with not actually realize that other tools like NX and other tools like TurboPack, under the hood, they actually use PNPM, or they advise you to use PNPM. So they're an abstraction on top of PNPM. So you don't have to only learn the tool if you like it, or like NX or TurboPack, but you also kind of need to know PNPM, because underneath, this is what it's working, right? So if you get a problem or if you have a specific need, you kind of have to know it, right?
Well, isn't that sort of like, in order to know Vue, you really sort of need to understand JavaScript, or Laravel, you have to use PHP, right? So
right.
real quick, before we go too far, I always like to define terms for those who might not know. Can we define what a monorepo is and give us an example of a working monorepo?
Absolutely. Monorepo is a Git other kind of repository, but I'm guessing nowadays Git repository that is not holding only one project, but it actually have multiple projects in it, each isolated usually in its own directory, and each of them have their own set of dependencies defined. This is I would say the definition of a monorepo, and you can work only on one of them, but they are in the same repository. So everything is kind of connected. One of the perks, maybe one of the main perks of the monorepo, that you can use other packages from within the repo together, without going through the whole process of let me publish that, let me update the versions on all the other packages, etc. So you can directly kind of depend on other packages in the same repository. That is monorepo in my mind.
Okay. So for like a company, could have different applications. Say they've got a Vue app versus a Angular app versus whatever.
Exactly.
The developers can work in the same repo, but only on their projects and only impact.
Yeah. I mean,
so how does that work? So when you're creating a branch, right? Let's say you create a feature branch for your particular project. You're creating a branch of the entire repo, but still just working within your.
Yes, you're creating the repo is one, so you're creating branches every time on the entire repo, but you can focus on your thing, only on your thing. And this is where tools like PNPM come in, because naturally NPM doesn't have this understanding, or didn't have. I'm not sure. I haven't followed up to the latest NPM. I'm not sure what it offers, but it didn't historically have the concept of multiple things in the same repo, right? Like you have to go there, each individual kind of things. They cannot be connected. Like NPM doesn't have this concept of connected packages within the same repo. So you need other tools. And PNPM, I think, is one of the few ones that are super successful. I think NPM has nowadays, or for a few versions, something like workspaces, but I haven't fully explored that because PNPM is just so amazing at the things that it can do and performant compared to NPM that there's, at least for some years that I've worked with PNPM, no point of kind of switching. So PNPM is a much, I would say, faster and leaner and very kind of focused tool, and can allow you to be super strict in things in a monorepo. When I say strict, we can go into very much the depths of dependency management, but maybe I can pause here and let you maybe direct me or point me to some questions or directions that are interesting, kind of.
I've always been curious what that first P stands for in PNPM.
I think it's performant. I am.
Is that what it is?
am not 100% sure. Don't put me on record here, but I think it's performant.
Yeah, I always have the important questions like that. So
yeah, that's kind of your responsibility, no?
So anyway, okay. So now we've established what a monorepo is and what PNPM is. So let's go forward. So what is it? What are you here to talk about? What is it that you're doing that is somehow enhancing this, or what is this? I'm sorry, the Breakproof.
Yes.
Do for us in that environment.
Amazing. Thank you for that kind of question. By the way, I adore the level of ability that you can break down something and you can kind of keep the conversation clear and not like go to bike shedding or something like this. So thank you.
Yeah. I like to make it clear.
So yeah, we established some background on PNPM and monorepos, and I've kind of tried to outline a problem that I see in the typical way of like putting dependencies in one big list of things that we do. By the way, in monorepos, it's the same thing. You can still have many packages, and this is what usually happens. You have an application, let's say Vue, let's use your example, and inside of Vue, you have all of its dependencies and all of its tools. So it will contain Jest, ESLint, Cypress, Playwright, whatever you have, it will be there, right? Okay, so what is this Breakproof thing, right? We wanted to try and escape this lock-in, the thing that the concept that I offered. We wanted to be able to upgrade one tool. And we faced so many situations. I mean, so many situations where we wanted to just upgrade one tool, like Lint Staged, a little tool that helps us with running checks before Git commit, right? Or on GitHub PR. We want just to upgrade that.
Yeah, I think we use that on my project. So yeah, I know what you're talking about.
So we want to upgrade that, but that required a new version of Node.js, the new version. I'm like, oh no, we're stuck in the same thing, the same loop. So we were looking for a tool, and we actually talked with the maintainer of PNPM, Zoltan, amazing guy. It was an amazing call. And we kind of teased him with this concept, like, hey, but what if we don't need Cypress to be coupled with our other stuff? We don't need Jest to be coupled with our Vue stuff, right? They're totally different concepts. Like, if you go back to our previous example, Webpack and Jest, they're totally different. Can I just be able to say, I'm in a monorepo, package A is my application. This is where I run my Vue code or React code or Angular, whatever, right? But I have package B, and this package B is all my Jest stuff. This is where all my Jest configuration lives, all my plugins for Jest. And what I want to be able to do is any application like package A or package C, if it's another application, as you suggested, maybe I have a Vue and an Angular app, right? Or let's say Vue and a React app. I want both of them to share my configuration. I don't want to redo it. I won't be able to just code Jest, have some base configuration that makes sense for our company or for this monorepo, and just run it from package A and package C. So this package B, this magical Jest, must be able to be isolated and must be callable from the other packages, right? So package A should be able to say, hey, I need Jest from package B, and package C should do the same thing. Cool. Let's say in a classic monorepo, no matter whether you use PNPM, you can structure these packages. Now, there's two questions, right? How do I call one package from the other package? Like, how do I call Jest from package B from package A to package whatever, right? So I'm not sure how other tools do it, and I don't think it's so popular as a thing, but PNPM allows you to filter out, to query with the command line, basically. You open the terminal, say PNPM, and you can filter packages. So you can select one package and run a script from its package JSON, or run a dependency that it's installed in this package, okay? So I can say PNPM filter my Jest package, Jest. So that will run Jest from my package that has all my Jest stuff, okay? So this allows basically to code Jest from these two other packages without installing Jest. So my package A with my Vue application doesn't have Jest installed, nothing, doesn't even know about Jest. But it can code Jest that is installed from the other package. Now, probably the question here is like, okay, why are we complicating things? Why are we making this separation? And now this is the key here. This is because PNPM, after we talked with Zoltan, did one feature, which is, I think, is for me, it changed the game in terms of a monorepo. They introduced the concept of runtime per package. And they, in the latest versions, by the way, a few versions back, 10 something, I think it's now, they even allow different than Node.js runtimes. So you can say my package A will have Node.js 14, it's a legacy one, let's say Angular 11, but my package B has all the latest React 19, like running some CLI that only runs on the newest Node.js. And I can even have like a concept experimental app that runs on Bun or other runtime and still live in the same repo, and I can still manage all of their dependencies through the same PNPM CLI. Right? So back to the original example. I know, very lengthy. I'm going to pause in a minute. I promise. Back in the original example, I have my Vue application and I have my Jest related stuff in a separate package, right? In the monorepo.
When you say a separate package, is that a separate, meaning like a separate directory?
Yes, separate directory. Sorry. Yes. Let's simplify things. Yes, two directories. One is my Vue application with all of its dependencies, and one is my Jest stuff. A separate directory with all of its Jest related dependencies and plugins, right? So PNPM with this feature, what allowed us is the Jest related stuff to be running at node 24, while your application can run at newer or older node. Like the application meaning the build of the application, right? So this means that I can run Jest. I can say from my application, I can say, hey, can you code Jest from the other package? And what this will do is code the other Node.js that is associated with the Jest from my application and can run on my source code. This way, I can use the specific node that I know it works with Jest from my application that I know that it works with a different node or the same node, but let's put it in a different node. This gives you the ability to absolutely freely upgrade Jest. You can upgrade Jest, and the only thing you need to do is make sure that the configuration doesn't break when you upgrade. And that's it. You don't have to think about all the interconnected dependencies that it might bring in. You can upgrade in isolation. That is, let's say, the largest change that this Breakproof repo and template is promoting. It's not only that, and it's not like, as you can see, it's not a major thing. Everything comes in from PNPM. There's a lot of other goodies, let's say, but I think this is the highlight, like being able to upgrade individually.
So yeah, I've got a lot of questions here. Being visual, it's hard to do this without actually looking at something. But so normally, in any project, the way it's always worked is you have your node modules directory, right, which has all your different dependencies and their dependencies and so on under your project root. So in your monorepo setup, then where do these separate versions of Node actually get installed?
Yes.
Where's the physical locations of those?
Fantastic. So you have two direct directories, right? I know It's a very visual thing. It's a podcast. Yes. Some people listen. So you have the two directories, and you can just accept them as two absolutely individual projects. They have inside of them the node modules for their own node modules. But your question was more like, where is the Node.js? And maybe the other question is, who installs the Node.js? Like how does you get the Node.js? I'm not sure if you have a innate understanding, or maybe you already know the answer, but maybe people are used to have a manager for Node.js versions, like NVM, very popular one. Right?
Node version manager, right?
Yes, Node version manager. It's a CLI tool. I can say, use this version. Or I can set it up so that when I go to a certain project, it automatically switches Node. Okay? It can also install Node versions, can also uninstall them. Like it manages Node versions. Cool. But what happens in this PNPM world? And now, this is the other fantastic thing. PNPM is not a dependency that lives under Node, right? It is written in JavaScript, but it's bundled as a standalone CLI. So it can work without a specific, like that. You don't have to have Node to be able to run PnPm. This is a huge difference from NPM. NPM is always bundled with a specific version of Node.js. Right. Okay, cool. So you have PnPm and it's a standalone thing. And the cool new feature is, like addition to PnPm, is that it can also manage Node.js versions. So it has like a NVM features. So it combines NPM and NVM together in one tool. I'm saying combine because PnPm, in my mind, is a superset of NPM, which means it has all of the functionalities of NPM. To be honest, even the same commands, and under the hood, basically, it's kind of the same results, but also can manage Node.js versions. And having that new feature that PnPm introduced after we talked with Zoltan, that allowed each package to define it, PnPm reads a specific property in your package JSON file. You have two directories, and each have package JSON file, right? And each of them can specify a property that I think is called runtime environment. And PnPm knows about this property, reads it, and checks if there is an installed Node.js with this version. If it doesn't have, it installs it for you automatically. You don't have to do anything. So even if you try to run something from a package that you don't have the Node.js version for, it will install it for you. Of course, you can pre-install it, but it will do it for you if you haven't done this step. I hope that this gives a better idea of like PnPm does it for you, basically. In a short answer, PnPm does it for you.
Okay. But again, where? So is it like you have a separate package for each version of Node 22, 23, 24, whatever versions you're using?
It is kind of the same as NVM. It installs them in your system, in your home directory, maybe. It installs them somewhere. It just knows how to run them for each package, basically. Okay. So if you have a package with Jest and dependencies, it knows that if you want to run stuff from there, it will use the installed Node.js version with that version. The installed Node.js with that version.
Okay, so in your packages, there are two, there's save and then there's save dev, right? So there's the tools that you need just while you're developing. Mm-hmm. And there's the tools the packages that need to be installed for your application to actually run, right?
Yes.
So you could have, to use the examples, we're using Jest as a testing utility. So you only need that at development time. So that would be a save dev type property in your package, that JSON.
Absolutely.
Say a CSS framework, say Tailwind, which is a real popular one, right? That's going to be you got to have that in your bundled JavaScript in order for your application to work, or at least to look decent. So can you have, I'm trying to think how to word this. Could you have two runtime packages that you need to actually run your application that aren't save dev that use different versions of Node? Or is that a non-issue?
Give me a second to kind of
actually,
process.
That wouldn't be an issue because Node is just your runtime for when you're developing, not so
Yes. If you're asking about runtime versus dev time, if runtime is the browser, you don't need to think about it.
Okay. Yeah, never mind. I just realized that I was asking that question.
And if you're talking about different tools, let's say Jest and ESLint, you can expand on the example and have a package for ESLint. So the package with ESLint comes with its own Node.js version and all of its plugins, right? Because it drags in a lot of plugins and they have their own dependencies, right? So maybe these dependencies will like mismatch with your own dependencies if you install them at the same place.
Okay, yeah. So I think I get the gist. So it's basically installing the different versions of Node.js on your system and then just referencing them from the packages as needed.
But being able to kind of use all the tools from one package that doesn't have them installed. So they don't interfere with your dependencies and they don't interfere with your Node.js version. Okay. They have their own thing.
So now you touched on something here real briefly that I wanted to ask about, and that's other runtimes. So you got Bun, you've got Deno, you've got other things. You don't necessarily have to use Node.js as your runtime. I think, was it Phoenix? Was that another one that was supposed to be and then sort of died on the vine?
You're now reaching my ability to know. But Deno, I know. Bun, I know. Node.js. Phoenix, okay. I'm not sure.
Anyway, forget that one. I didn't know much about it. Anyway, the point is, does all of this, the PNPM, and this repo that you have, does that only work with Node.js, or can you support Bun or Deno or other runtimes as well?
Fantastic question. One of the latest versions of PNPM allowed this new thing. They started with this concept after we talked. Zotan, we talked about it, and they introduced Node.js only, right? So you can have Node 11 and Node 20. But I think in the recent versions, they changed that. So they introduced the ability to choose Deno for one environment, Node.js, so one package, one directory. This will run with Deno. So all your scripts, all your installed dependencies will run through Deno. Deno will run them, basically, right? So you specify Deno and a version, and in another directory, in another package JSON, you specify Node.js at a version. I can not commit to how many runtimes does it support. I am not sure. I am not sure how many of them they support, but I saw Deno. And I think I saw Bun. And I think these are the kind of, I hope I don't offend anyone, but these are the major, let's say, talking discussion points, etc., kind of as runtimes. I'm sure there's others. There's probably edge runtimes that I don't know if they have you can install them. Like I know Cloudflare has their own thing. Akamai Edge workers have their own thing. Vercel has a runtime, but I'm not sure if it's just Node.js. So many JavaScript runtimes, by the way. I'm not sure if they're all installable.
God, that reminds me, I saw a post on Hacker News probably in the last month, and it was a history of JavaScript runtimes.
Oh.
And the guy said it took probably like a year to write this article, because I was thinking, oh yeah, there's a few. Holy cow. It was crazy how far he back. I mean, just link after link after link. And I don't know if this is the one. I'll have to find it maybe, but I was like, holy cow, there's been a lot of JavaScript runtimes. But yeah, here it is. The many JavaScript runtimes of the last decade. Maybe I'll do this as a pick. Anyway, so there's a lot, but we're just focusing on these three, right?
Kind of
for now.
Kind of, yeah.
Okay, so you have this Yotpo Breakproof base monorepo. This is it's on GitHub. Yeah. Breakproof-base-monorepo under Yotpo Ltd. So how would this be implemented, or how is this something where you'd have to fire this up and build it, from everything from the beginning, or can you implement it into, say, an existing monorepo, or how would you use this?
Okay, also fantastic question. I mean, I think I should just pick your questions and put them as a list how I start talking about this. Okay. So even by its name, I hope it gives some clue about it. So it says base monorepo. And going further,
I thought you were saying Breakproof was the key.
It is. I mean, Breakproof. Okay. Given your status of a dead jokes owner and king, I think you're kind of picking on the important things. Yes, Breakproof is the king keyword, and it is because of specifically that. It doesn't allow you to break one package just because you upgrade another, right? That's where it all started from. That's where it all started from. But base monorepo, it kind of gives the clue of how it's supposed to be, or intended to be used, right? So the GitHub has this concept of template repositories. Not sure if you've seen it, but if you enter a template repository, it basically has a button say create from this template.
That makes sense. I mean, that's just standard template type functionality. Yes. Sure.
The one thing, why is this not a template? It basically fits perfectly the case of a template repository. But what happens that it's not super known is that when you press create template repository, it blanks out the entire history of the repo. So it basically commits all the files of the repo as a new repo with no history. Okay? So you have a blank new slate and you don't have all the previous changes, etc. Okay?
Well, that can be good or bad, I suppose.
Exactly. It could be good. Less, let's say, size of the repo. You don't have to care about this stuff, right? But one of the, let's say, not so great stuff is that if you fork it instead of that, if you create your own based on the history, it's kind of easy to pull changes, right? Like if you, let's say you have a library and I want to do a PR with some feature or bug fix. What I do is fork it, do some changes in my own branch and create a PR to your own original repository, right? And I can do that very easily because Git knows about the histories. They're shared. My fork has all of the history of your original repository, right? And vice versa, if you update your original repository, I can pull in all the changes, right? So we picked...
You're talking about forking the whole repo, not just a branch within a given repo, right?
You fork the entire repo. You fork the entire repo. Usually it's the main branch. Like you kind of copy the main branch only, right?
Right.
So what is the major difference? Okay. So this is where I need to mention a bit more maybe about what the repository is, but the whole intended use is you kind of clone it. You clone it to your own repository and you start from there. Why? Why do you use this as a new repository? Okay. And you asked, how do I get my projects in it? Can I just plug it in my own existing repo? The answer here is no. You can't really plug it in your own existing, but what you can do is you import your project from your existing repo in here. We created some utilities like interactive CLI with like questions like, where is your repo? Where do you want it to be? So when you clone the Breakproof based monorepo and you get like this copy of it, you can then import the projects from elsewhere. So you can import them from other monorepos or other Jest repos, and you put them as a package inside of your copy of the Breakproof monorepo. That's the intended use. And I guess there's very much unknowns here of why is this like this. And I should mention something, but I'm going to pause again here to let you pick the first questions if you already have some.
Well, if we're talking about getting your project into this repo, no, I don't have any questions, but I do have some after that.
Okay, cool. So you have your own clone, right? You copied the repository with the you forked it with the entire history. Next step, you imported the project. You got it. So why do you need this extra step and extra work of moving your project, right? So far we only talked about this PnPm ability of isolation, okay? But what it gives you is this base monorepo doesn't only have this concept. Otherwise, it wouldn't be a base monorepo, right? It would be just a README file. You can do that with PnPm. Do it yourself. Good luck. Bye. What it comes in is with already some tools installed as isolated packages, right? They're not installed for your package. You can create your own package with you, but there's already tools in it. Most of them, they're in a directory called infra. As we go back there, if you go back to our original conversation, there's like categories of packages, right? There's something about the build, there's something about code checks, there's something about testing. So these are kind of a tooling that you usually have in an application. So this repo comes with some of those packages that are isolated with their own dependency in their own packages and their own Node.js version already there. So what you are able to do is have your project already run ESLint, already run Jest, already configured with some base sensible configuration. It's not opinionated and you can change it, but it's centralized and it's already working. So this concept that we introduced in the beginning, it's a starter. It's a starter that you can use. So they are already working. A cool part is usually as we talked about scale of companies, right? And scale of projects. When you have 10 projects, you kind of want to reuse and not repeat every single time and have one project with slightly different test configuration from the other, because you end up with this bug chasing where the result and the causation usually is like, it was fixed, but not in this other package, but in the other one, right? So you want to have something centralized as a base sensible configuration. And the repository comes with base sensible configuration for Jest, base sensible configuration for ESLint, and different kind of tools that are not very known, but kind of useful, like finding unused dependencies, finding dependencies that are not installed, but you kind of use them. All these kind of code checks, they have their own package, their own Node.js and all base configuration that your own package can just reference, right? And of course, if you have your Vue application, let's reuse the example, and you want to extend, you want to change some ESLint plugin, sure, you can do that. Because it only provides you with a base config. It just extends the base config, and you just apply it with more configuration. You override something. You disable a plugin, enable a new one. This is just a base for you to play with, and already isolated ESLint. And I want to just mention one more thing. What is the coolest part for me personally, after this isolation we talked about, is you have your clone, you have your copy, right? In several months, you say, wait, a new version of ESLint. I'm not sure if you dealt with upgrading ESLint 8 to ESLint 9, but it wasn't a pleasant upgrade. I can tell you that. It was not pleasant.
Speaking from personal experience, huh?
ESLint is amazing. I love ESLint. I'm super thankful to, I think, Josh. I'm hoping I'm not getting this wrong. I loved it, and we use it extensively, but the upgrade was hard. So imagine if you have your clone and the base Breakproof repository keep on changing, right? And at some point, the base repository upgraded ESLint in itself. And you want to also upgrade it. What you can do, instead of you upgrading it yourself in your clone, is just pull the changes from the base without fearing that it will break anything. Because it's isolated. It doesn't affect your package. It only upgrades ESLint. It only upgrades Node.js maybe for the ESLint, but it's very isolated. So now, suddenly, just doing git pull from Breakproof or whatever, right? Your git clone second origin, let's put it. You now suddenly have upgraded ESLint. And that's it. You continue your day without major, let's figure out configuration now, etc., etc., etc. So you suddenly have a newer version, like even major version of ESLint with just one git pull. Okay, I'm going to pause here. If it makes sense, if it doesn't.
I guess my thought is, what I'm trying to get my head around is, you've got this one, you pulled in your project. So going back to the example that we've been using, is Jest, or having different packages that use different versions of Node, say. So where does that happen? At what point is that something you have to do manually, where you split out your Jest to a separate directory in the monorepo?
Yes. And this is already split in the base, however. You can have other tools. You can have other tools. If you have a CLI tool called Steve, right? Or you have a CLI tool called... Name. I know. I think if it doesn't exist, go book it.
Trademark right here.
So anyway, if you wanna create a tool like this, yes, you have to create your own package. You have to define what runtime it will run, and basically all other packages can call Steve from its own package, which will be run with the specified runtime. But for some tools which are kind of popular, let's put it in the web world, right? It doesn't have to be front end, but it's majorly like this repository is kind of focused on the front-end side of JavaScript, right? But it can be used also for Node.js. So it comes with some popular packages. I wouldn't say that all of them are favorable. I know, for example, Cypress is kind of going out of favor for years now. And some of them are because simply we have legacy in Yotpo. And as a company, we need to kind of pay attention. Once we started using a big thing like Cypress to do our integration end-to-end test, we kind of want to keep going to a certain point. So we have a package for Cypress, for Jest, for ESLint, for even little things like DPDM that I mentioned that are lesser known code checks, for also build tools like Webpack and other interesting code checks, by the way. And build tools that I mentioned, like tsconfigs as well. It's another big topic, but it's coming already there. So back to your question, you don't have to create separate packages for the things that exist, but for any other new tool that you want to introduce, you can create one.
Okay. Yeah, I think I'm going to have to play with it at some point just to get my head around it and how it works. I certainly get the concept, and it makes a lot of sense. Because, I can speak from personal experience on version upgrades and version conflicts between different packages that they all depend on. So,
and now I want to maybe, let's say, foresee one possible question that I might get when I mention this, right? We mentioned these effortless upgrades. You just pull in the latest changes from Breakproof repo because it's a separate repo. It keeps evolving, right? Your clone is from the time that you cloned it from or like copied it from. You can then upgrade and you get all the latest Jest, ESLint, TypeScript, or like the other tools. Now, maybe a question you have is like, but Anton, the new ESLint have a new algorithm and new rules and new maybe strictness, right? Maybe you even change the config, the base config, right? That I'm extending in my application. Does that mean that my entire application now will like shout at me with red squiggles everywhere? Right? Like, I mean, you only mentioned about upgrading ESLint as its own thing, but what happens to my application and my rules? And you'll be right to ask that, because if I didn't have an answer for that, this is exactly what would happen. Like, you upgrade ESLint and all of the config, and suddenly in your editor, everything will be red. You will not be able to commit. Your PRs will just light up with like all the errors that are coming in. And this is, I think, where the interaction with Dan happened on Blue Sky. He was talking about having a project with JavaScript or like a older version of TypeScript and wanting to go to newer version or more stricter, or even just introduce TypeScript. Okay. And this is kind of the same scenario, like changing the ESLint config, because something in the code checks become different, and all of a sudden all your code screams at you and says like it's red. So how do you jump over this hurdle? How do you go from previously it was working, now with a little change, it's now suddenly not working? And Dan actually talked 2 times on this podcast from the 2 years that I've listened to you prolifically about this topic. And he mentioned several times like, oh man, this is a nightmare. And yes, it is a nightmare because you don't have many options. You have like, okay, maybe you only introduced for the TypeScript files and we don't check the JavaScript files, or we only introduce a few checks, but not all the checks that we want, right? Because in an ideal world, we have like a list of checks that we all agree on that are good and this is how it should be, and we turn them on. But in this scenario, everything goes red. Okay, so what am I talking about? What is the solution? It was proposed to me. It wasn't original. As I said, even this repository, it's kind of all going around PNPM with some more stuff just around it, right? So it was proposed to me in a previous company I work with. It was the idea of having an old project running with the strictest possible config for ESLint, whatever you like, all the plugins that you want. However, running a snapshot of all the errors, aka remembering in my file called Anton.ts, I have 5 errors of this type. I have 7 errors of this different type. I have 20 errors of undefined. I have 20 more for console log that I don't want to have in my file, right? And remembering that for each file that you have in the repository and just having this kind of a mini registry. Imagine it like a JSON file of like key value. File name, type of error, how many? File name, type of error, how many? And this is an invaluable resource when upgrading and going stricter, going to a better rule. Why? Because it lets you see the problems. It lets all of your developers see, aha, my editor is saying this is a problem. So I can focus on it, or I can at least understand there's a better way. While your CI checks at the point of upgrade, at the point you make it stricter, still pass. Why? Because you run ESLint, but you also tell ESLint, hey, ignore all of these number of errors in these files. So if you have 5 undefined, like let's say errors in this file, then you do a change. If there's still 5 or less than 5, it's okay. If there's more than 5, then you scream and you fail the commit and you fail the PR. So it's an approach that lets you gradually kind of increase the checks, but still remember the status quo, like not forcing you to change all of your code today. So I think this is where the, let's say, the breakproof part comes in. It allows you to keep going on. It gives you the errors. It tells you what they are. It lets you upgrade. All of the tools live in isolation, but it lets you keep going on. Of course, you can plan tech debt. You have to plan it, right? When to do it, but it doesn't force you to do it now, and still lets you use newer stuff, because newer stuff don't come only with stricter stuff. They also come with improvements, maybe performance, maybe like a different kind of build, maybe a new feature that you've waited so much in TypeScript 4.8. I know that your opinion specifically on this is not about TypeScript, but let's say ESLint, or you change from ESLint to another tool. You want to remember the new set of errors. You don't want to fix them now. Okay, a lot of talking. I'm going to pause again. But that's how we handle the flawless, let's say the interrupted upgrade. You get the new version, you snapshot if there's any problems, and you keep going.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. Again, it's something I probably want to play with a little more before I can ask any good questions. Before we wrap up, I will note one thing in here. I'm just looking at the directory structure, and I notice you have directories for configs for GitHub, for IDEA, which is basically all the JetBrains tools, and then VS Code as well. These are just standard. What kind of settings are you keeping? There's any number of settings you can put in there. So what kind of stuff do you have in those directories?
I love the questions. I mean, I told it probably many times, but this is an excellent question, because many of the monorepo tools that I mentioned there, they exist, right? They help you manage it, and they give you tools to, and like description somewhere online, documentation of how to configure your development environment, like how to configure IntelliJ, how to configure VS Code to best work with this monorepo. But in the company we work at, we wanted this to be seamless. Like, we don't want it to, as developers, to read documentation and each of them follow each steps. Maybe someone didn't read one step. They contact us. Hey, this doesn't work, right? Okay, I see you nodding. You know the drill. So yes, we added some base configuration that we know, and because we know this repository setup, we know how it's managed, right? We know all the tools. We know how to run the tools. And we know how to kind of configure your editor. So we went with a base configuration for your editor, plus a CLI that you can run to kind of onboard you. It's like if you run PMP, there's a command, I don't remember by heart, but if you run a command, let's say PMP and Breakproof onboard, it will ask you, what is your editor? There we go. And it will instruct you, I will now set up the base settings for this repo. So it's best for the initial interaction. So to configure, let's say, ESLint in your VS Code, you configure ESLint running for JetBrains, so you don't have to forget. I've seen it so many times. You get a new project, you open it up, ESLint doesn't work, or a different version of ESLint, by the way, it's possible to run. Like, this is total possibility. Even VS Code, I'm not sure how many people know, it comes with a built-in versions for these kind of tools, like TypeScript. And by default, it will run them, not your version. So you get different kind of errors in your editor than the ones that you get when you build, which is super confusing. So yes, thank you for the question. This is what these repositories are. And there's one for Git hooks, basically, which is the things that will run automatically for you on pre-commit. Because why? Because it comes in with some like structure and conventions that you can follow. Like all of it is nothing like separate packages and additional abstractions. It's just a convention for your own package. For example, as long as you have a pre-commit script, maybe, or I think it was called lint pre-commit, as long as you have this script in your package JSON, it will specifically run it before you commit. You don't need to do any additional configuration. And it's all possible because it knows it's managed with PNPM. Okay, I'm going to pause here. I know we're kind of wrapping up, so yeah.
Yeah. Or if in my case, you just skip the pre-commit hook sometimes just to get it committed. No. We won't talk about that. Yeah, so we sort of hit our time limit here, so we'll need to start wrapping up. So before we get to picks, was there anything, two questions. One, was there anything that you wanted to cover that we didn't cover about this repo?
Yes. I'm not a fast talker, or maybe I am, but I'm not able to be super concise. maybe the one thing that we didn't cover, like we can go into more details, I don't know, later on, is the fact that because the repository is so integrated, as you see, right? Editors, packages that are already there, right? It comes in with understanding of the structure of the repository. So it comes in with already working CI, already knowing what to run on your PR, already knowing how to publish your package to NPM registry. All of the things are there, and they work very well with the repository because they understand it. So it's not only a management for dependencies and project, it's also for you to eliminate this step of like, oh, I need to set up now jobs for end-to-end testing, for publishing, for deploying, for checks. All of it is there, configured with like concurrency and everything that you need. But yeah, that's my short answer. Yes, I did have something I didn't cover.
So, okay. All right. Well, thank you. This is, my brain hurts.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Last hour.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
No, that's quite all right. Yeah, there's a classic. Are you familiar with The Far Side? There's a real famous cartoon here.
I'm not.
In the States. Oh, it's awesome. Look it up online. There's this guy. They're just, one panel cartoons. And there's a famous one where he shows a kid in class raising his hand. Excuse me, can I leave class? My brain is full. So that's what I looked at. I'll make that as a pick. I don't know where to find it online, but it's awesome. All right. And then if people want to follow you and give you money or read more about this stuff, where are the best places to do that?
Okay. I'll start with the project. It's breakproof.dev. It will just redirect you to the repo, breakproof.dev. Otherwise, for me personally, I use Blue Sky. Not extremely active, but I'm there. I respond to messages. That's my kind of a small area of social online life. Sometimes LinkedIn. But that's it.
And what are you on Blue Sky? What's your
Blue
handle?
Sky, I'm Stoychev.dev. So it's my family name, .dev.
.dev. Yes, and that redirects you. All righty. Well, with that, we will shift to picks. Picks are the part of the program where we get to talk about anything we want to talk about. Anything from games to books to food to movies to social issues, you name it. I'm going to stick in the tech realm and reference a blog post that I mentioned earlier called The Many, Many, Many JavaScript Runtimes of the Last Decade. It's on buttondown.com, _Jamie. And it is amazing. Just all of the runtimes that are out there that he talks about, whether it's TVs, operating systems and native apps and microcontrollers and edge computing and so on. And at the end, he gives a little summary. He says, this was published in June of this year. I think it was June 27th to 25. And at the end, he gives a little summary. He says he started working on this in April of 2024 and stretched the limits of Button Down. I guess that's the platform here. Edit history at over 5,260 revisions. Whoa. By August of that month. So yeah, even then he still doesn't think it's finished. But yeah, it's a great, interesting, if you're into this type of stuff, it's a great blog post. And then with that, we will switch to the dad jokes of the week, which are the high point of any of these episodes, as any fan will tell you. So we'll start out. My wife was mad at me because I woke her up at 3:00 a.m. But I just wanted to tell her that she forgot to take her sleeping pills. Yes. I think everybody knows the movie Jaws, about the shark. But did you know that if you watch it backwards, it's actually a heartwarming story about a shark who gives arms and legs to people who need them? And then recently I saw a story about a man who's suing a company that makes a product called Smart Water for not making him smart. I'm not sure what he was thinking, but along those lines, I would like to formally announce my lawsuit against Thin Mints because they really don't make you thin. So those are my picks. Dad jokes of the week. What do you have for us, Anton?
I am trying to find a translation for it in English. Give me a sec. But I bought it's a kitchen thing. It's a kitchen thing. And I amazed my father with it. Give me a second. Give me a second. Give me a second. Oh man. Okay,
I'm gonna Jeopardy theme in here. Yeah.
What is the time limit? Oh no. Pomegranate. Okay. Oh, sorry. I mean, pronunciation. Shit. I know. So pomegranate is kind of a famously messy to open it and clean it, and I love it, by the way. Yeah, it's a fruit. It's a fruit. It's like a red fruit. It's prolific in, let's say, Greece, which is like a neighboring country here in Bulgaria. And it is also part of the south parts is there. And my dad, as a person coming from there, loves this. I mean, when I was growing up, it was just pomegranate. Like anytime it's the season. And of course, it's like a special type of like opening it and getting the seeds out, etc. And recently I don't know, browsed online, this kind of a shopping, anti-depressing, running away from reality moment. So I ended up at a kitchen tool that you kind of put the pomegranate on, and it comes with a little hammer. Like, it's super cute. It comes with a little hammer, and it removes the mess from getting the seeds out, and it keeps the pieces that holds the seeds out of the seeds. It's amazing. Like, I know maybe I'm not doing a good service and a job describing it. It's a pomegranate cleaning tool or whatever, and I love it. Only the fact that it amazed my dad when I showed how this works was worth it. So highly recommend that.
And it's called what?
I pomegranate too. Like, there's no real name. There's no product name, to be honest. Like, I think it was like, I couldn't find like a brand that sells it. It was like random websites. To be honest, all of them have like a different brand names. So I'm not sure there's like a one origin brand that created this.
Yeah, Amazon's got a few under pomegranate tool.
Yeah. I mean,
okay. I think I see it. Okay. Yeah. Is it like, you think the one I'm seeing has like a bowl and then a piece on top of it?
It's like a little metal bowl. Yes. It's almost like a sieve. There's like a little bowl that is exactly the size of a pomegranate. It looks like this lemon squeezer. There's no squeezing involved.
Yes.
But you put the pomegranate on it and you use the little hammer. It's just ridiculous. Yeah. It's just ridiculous when you think about it, like being in the kitchen, having a little wooden hammer with it and just knocking out the seeds. I mean, I love all of it and how it functions, the efficiency of it, and my wife coming in and just looking at me, hammering away at the pomegranate. I love all of it.
Yeah. The pomegranate peeler 2024. There's a few different options out here. Yeah,
amazing. I know, a ridiculous pick. I could have picked so much other stuff.
Oh no, the life hack type of picks. Those are the best ones that help solve the little problems.
Cool,
for sure. All right. Well, we're going to wrap up. Thank you, Anton, for coming on and telling us about your project. I know there are many people out there that use monorepos, and as I sort of mentioned off there, we have a project that we're looking to move forward, open sourcing in a monorepo type of structure. So that will be definitely a tool to look at.
Thank you for having me.
My pleasure.
It was a pleasure.
All right. Thanks everybody for listening, and we'll talk to you next time on JavaScript Jabber.